Ramadan in general, because the last 10 days are considered the holiest of the 10 days of the 30th of Ramadan, but also all because many people would be going into itikaf, and that's in that isolation for that period as well in the mosques around the country. You may have your own experiences of what it's been like observing the seclusion, the itikaf in the mosque or at home in the past, and if so, I'd like to get your thoughts on that. 061 766 0355, 061 766 0355. Lots to talk about. We'll chat to Mavuso, who's the CEO of Business Leadership South Africa, about all thing business and leadership. That comes up as our big top story where we look at the big picture into that. We'll also cross to Pakistan to get the latest on Imran Khan's plans post being deposed as the prime minister. He had a big rally yesterday. Well, I say rally on a Twitter space rally. Huge crowds present, no surprise. Hello, darlings. That company, that business is being, there's an application for it being provisionally liquidated. We'll chat to the liquidator about that. And Al Jamaa, the Islamic Ethos political party, celebrating 15 days today. Let's find out how relevant they've been. There's so much more in terms of the Leslie Donna Williams, very inspiring person, the head of the Chimologong precinct, very much in the innovation space. We'll chat to her as one of the people who champions South Africa, so looking forward to that conversation. And in the Know Your Mosque feature, as part of the historical mosques in South Africa, we'll chat about the Queen Street Mosque in Pretoria. So looking forward to that conversation when I speak to Ahmed Ghani coming up later. All things for you. You can, besides WhatsApping, text or voice notes anytime. You can also comment on the various social media pages, and of course you can tag me anytime on all the social media pages. You'll certainly find me there, right? This show itself is brought to you by the Africa Muslims Agency. Imagine a world where every family has food for suhoor and iftar in Ramadan. Well, imagine, and again, what can you do? Call AMA on 010 0722 262.
Africa. This Ramadan, join Africa Muslims Agency to provide meals to the fasting for 100 Rand a day, a food hamper for 1,500 Rand, or feed a village for 15,000 Rand per day. Imagine if you could earn Allah's forgiveness in these 10 days through your acts of charity. Donate today. Call AMA on 011-834-8685 or donate online. Africa Muslims Agency, commemorating 35 years of empowering, educating, inspiring.
Spread the sunshine and make mealtimes sunshine delicious. Sunshine Green, the versatile margarine and fat spread that is perfect for spreading, baking, and cooking. Need inspiration? Visit nowwecooking.co.za.
The global wheat market is in turmoil and prices have risen rapidly. This places the most vulnerable Syrians at greater risk of hunger and food insecurity. Sponsor a ton of flour at just 7,500 Rand and help ensure displaced Syrian families get their daily bread. Donate flour for Syria online at alimdad.com or call 0861 786 243 for more information.
World-class financial services only at Sapphire Global, your financial partner. If you are looking for Islamic, Sharia, and ethical financial products, look no further. Sapphire Global offers a wide range of financial service offerings from short-term to life and investments. A full-service center with all financial requirements under one brand. Our highly skilled and experienced consultants are ready to help protect your financial future. Contact us on 041 001 0184 or visit our website on www.sapphireglobalfs.com. Sapphire Global is an authorized financial services provider.
Zakah has the power to end extreme poverty. If the whole world gave zakah, it could end extreme poverty many times over. Islamic Relief has been distributing zakah for over 38 years. Our zakah policy complies with strict Sharia guidelines. It's endorsed by qualified scholars, and it only goes to eligible rights holders. So, harness the power of your zakah with Islamic Relief.
Are you looking for a cross-border road transport company that is committed in achieving high safety standards, who is fast and efficient, and also excellent customer service? Garda Global specializes in cross-border transport from South Africa to Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Malawi. Garda Global, situated at 10 Daniel Road, Benrose, Johannesburg. For inquiries, contact our trained staff on 011 614 3108 or email info@gardaglobal.co.za. Safe, long haul into Africa is our business. Garda Global Transport.
It's been a household name for years. It's been an important ingredient in South African kitchens, and it's been an affordable, healthy choice for your family. Helios. First our pure sunflower cooking oil, and now introducing Helios margarines and spreads. Following the same traditions and tastes you've grown to love and trust from Helios. Fortified with vitamins A, D, and E, also rich in omega-3 and 6 essential fatty acids for a healthy eating lifestyle. Helios margarine and spreads, available now at all leading South African supermarkets. Helios margarine, the tradition lives on.
This is the Ashraf Garda Show, 8 to 10 a.m., and you're listening to Salam Media.
Right, so much to talk about. We're going to cover all those things in the next 2 hours. Looking forward to all of that, and do stay tuned for that. Right, but let's start as we always do with in this month of Ramadan. So another 8 days or so for me hosting the show. 7 days, I think it is. Looking at the big picture into certain issues, and today's the big picture into business. And how business leads, and I'm very interested in how in business leading, business is able to impact on government and civil society to deliver to us the South Africa that we want, the South Africa of our dreams, I should say, or maybe, in my opinion, from a champion South Africa perspective, a champion nation. So with me is Busisiwe Mavuso, who's the CEO of Business Leadership South Africa. Busi, I appreciate your time. Good morning.
Good morning, Ashraf. Thank you very much for inviting me. We've been threatening to have this conversation for quite some time. I'm glad it has finally happened.
Well, I think this is one, and I have a sense there'll be another one in a couple of weeks' time on a different space. So we'll see about that, right? Looking forward to that too, right? Let's talk about, I mean, my broad conversation is, without getting into the nuts and bolts for starters, is, you got government, you got business, you got civil society, right? Now, business essentially they employ people, they make profit, but I'm suggesting that particularly in South Africa, business has a huge role to play in delivering the country of our dreams. I'm sure you could agree with me, and the question is how.
Yeah, Ashraf, there's no doubt, that the license to operate for business in this country, especially looking at where we are, from an unemployment, poverty, and inequality perspective, from the perspective that we still are on that journey of seeking to redress the past imbalances, business definitely as the only social partner with disproportionate resources and maybe a disproportionate voice has an obligation to do more than just conducting their daily operations, as it were. Look, whether we wanted to do it or not, I don't think we've got a choice as business, Ashraf, because we cannot be an island of prosperity in a sea of poverty. We will not be able to operate in a socially stable environment when there is so much domestic inequality around us. So we therefore do have a role and an obligation to intervene as business. And I think there's absolutely no doubt about that. And I think what business can seriously come to the party in terms of trying to assist South Africa and turn the corner, in terms of trying to assist South Africa achieve this notion of economic recovery, is in assisting with this notion of state capacitation. Because when you look at why we are where we are as a country, why we are struggling to implement the critical structural reforms that we've been talking about, why service delivery, is not where it should be, why ESCOM is a mess, why the ports are a mess. It's precisely because we do not have a capable state. And this is the genesis of our problems. But of course, you and I know that we are sitting where we're sitting because At some point, this government decided to be anti-intellectuals, and that has obviously created a serious capacity gap. So it's pleasing that you see a president who's talking about how we meaningfully include business, how we actually achieve this notion of public-private partnerships. But the problem about that, Ashraf, is does government seriously mean it? You know, when they say that we seriously want to work alongside business, do they really mean it? You know, do they?
But maybe let me ask you about that on both levels. In your opinion, does government seriously mean it? And then we'll ask you whether business seriously means it in terms of being this great enabler.
You know, does government seriously mean it? Unfortunately, government is not a homogeneous group, so it probably maybe depends what level or which department, of government or which unit of government you're actually talking about. There are, units of government that seriously mean it, and there has been great private-public partnership collaboration. And we have seen great results. We have, for instance, been working very closely with the Operation Vulindlela team, which is a unit, in the presidency that has been tasked with implementing, the critical structural reforms. And we know that because of their interventions and the support of business, we now have the 100 megawatt self-generation on the energy security front. We know that they are working on the, skills visa reform, and we've obviously assisted them in terms of putting that document together. They've achieved, the auctioning of the spectrum. But you see, we've achieved the 100 megawatts self-generation without license as a policy. But when you're looking at where we are at the moment, there isn't a single project that has been registered with NESA of 100 megawatts, even though there is a queue of 3,900 megawatt projects that business is ready to implement today, only if NESA were to remove the bureaucracy. So
but does it suggest, and to go back to the position about state capacity, do you get a sense, and I mean, and being honest about this in terms of that is this current, and I'm not going to get into the different political party discussion, but in terms of the government, that does this government currently 2022, does it have the capacity to deliver on to the needs of its citizens, or are we falling short every day? And as you know, as I talk, I can list 10 things where we're falling short.
Ashraf, the truth of the matter is that government doesn't have the capacity to do what it needs to do, and I think we've seen the diminishing state capacity and leadership, over the past 10 years, and as a result, we really do not have a capable state, and there is very little that is actually being done in terms of trying to ensure that we get the right people into power. And I think this, for me, starts at the hem, what political figures are you actually putting in place? Because look, what happens in the ANC, whether we like it or not, is going to have an impact on government, because it is an ANC-led government, because they are in power. So if you're still going to be appointing a Zandile Gumede, who's a thief in eThekwini, what do you think is going to happen, within government? If Zweli Mkhize, is contesting the ANC elections, and if he does come through as president, what do you think is going to happen in government? He's going to hire other thieves like him, If you're going to have the Mpumalanga elections, having people elected who are convicted criminals, what do you think is going to happen in the future in government? If you're sitting with government or elected leaders that without hesitation steal food parcels from the hungry and steal PPE from the sick and dying, then for sure that we have lost it. So if you were to look at what is going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years, if the current cadre of leadership is that of thieves, thieves masquerading as government officials, then Ashraf, we are in trouble. We are never going to actually, fix this state capacity issue anytime soon. State capacitation means that getting people who are serious about moving the dial, but thieves are not that way orientated. They want to come in and you can eat some more.
Well, I mean, you've used strong words. I mean, some of the people, there's slurs to their names. Some people have been asked to step aside. Not everybody's been convicted, as you know. I'm just making that point. But the essence of what you're saying is true, that if we're going to continue on this road, and the ANC themselves have acknowledged that the perpetrators of corruption come within their midst, right? Why don't you think that the ruling party is going to continue on this course? Because it doesn't seem, based upon the appointments of the last week alone, right, it doesn't seem it can actually shift from that position.
You know why the ruling party does what it does, I honestly don't know. You know, I wish I can be a fly on the wall when they have their own internal discussions and really understand how they are thinking about this thing. You know, because I would have thought that their main focus should be looking at how do we actually ensure that South Africa moves along. Their main focus should be looking at how we actually turn the corner. Their main focus should be actually looking at how do we ensure that the center holds. Because the genesis of our problems is that the center is not holding and this thing is coming apart at the seams. So what does fixing that mean? What type of leadership, you know, do we actually need to have to ensure that we can, you know, deliver and usher leadership that will make sure that we're going to have a stable government in future? Because governments are actually central in having a prosperous country, you know, because it is governments, not geography, not ethnicity, not natural endowments that separates good prosperous states to bad failing states. And the reason why we are where we are as South Africa is because our leaders are not what they ought to be. So I don't understand, therefore, what leadership conversations are happening within the ANC to ensure that we can actually, you know, put South Africa on a different trajectory than what we've been on, you know, at least in the last 20 years.
So I'm going to put it to you that most of these leaders within, and we're talking the ruling party because they're in government, are spending far too much time not ensuring that the center of the country holds, but ensuring that their cadres are elected to positions of power simply because that's what they want, right? But the broader issue then is when you say we don't know, I'd love to know what happens, you know, within the inner circles of the ANC. Now, if not so much the ANC, why would you, as the CEO of Business Leaders SA, not know what is happening within the inner circle of government?
We do have conversations with government. You know, government as business has got a bilateral, you know, but when we speak, you know, to government, we are speaking good speak. You know, there is agreement that there is importance, or it is important for the country to drive the critical structural reforms. And I think when you listened to the president at the beginning of the year delivering the SONA address, you know, he was spot on. You know, he was touching on all the issues that we've been raising as business around the need to ensure that there is, you know, sustainable economic growth that we actually achieve as a country. The need to ensure that we implement pro-growth and structural reforms. You know, the need to ensure that we can drive investment into the country. The need to ensure that we can improve the country's fiscal trajectory and economic fortunes. You know, the need to ensure that energy, telecommunications, transport, red tape, you know, systemic corruption, cutting down the degree of state ownership on some of these critical measures to fix our broken economy is actually achieved. So we are speaking good speak, but speaking and doing is totally two different things, Ashraf. So from a tone perspective, 8 out of 10, you know, I would give government. But from an implementation perspective, it is now underwhelming when this government says it's going to do anything. Because if history is anything to go by, you know, then we've actually failed to deliver. And when you're looking at why we have failed to deliver, Ashraf, you will see that it is precisely because we don't have the right people in the job. We don't have the right people with the know-how, with the knowledge, with the expertise to be able to deliver on what this government needs to deliver.
Okay, hopefully the ruling party and the other political parties will ensure that they do have the right people in their jobs, and that's another conversation. To go back into to business leadership, SA, right? So you have this bilateral, you know, agreement with an arrangement with government, and you're saying they say certain things at SONA and they don't really follow through, and the appointments regarding, you know, Zanele Gomede just recently clearly has irked you, which suggests that they're not clearly listening for what's right for the country, right? So what more then can business do? Because that's the position that you are in now, right? So what more can you and your constituency do, in either talking to government or creating the type of structures outside of government. I don't mean an extra parliamentary situation, no, but certainly in other ways to try and capacitate so that we as a country are able to just live pretty normal lives, which we are not doing at this point in time.
Ashraf, business is actually capacitating on a whole lot of fronts, because if you are not capacitating to enable delivery, then I think, whatever else you're doing outside of that is a pointless exercise, because the main focus for the country right now is to look at how do we ensure that we can attract the necessary investment that will lead to the necessary levels of economic growth. Because with the necessary levels of economic growth, then we are in a position to be able to absorb the 45.6% unemployment in terms of the expanded definition. So the capacitation of government should be center, and the main focus, of business. And I think I can tell you that we are, intervening on the energy security front. We are intervening on the infrastructure front. We are intervening on the red tape front. We are intervening on the OV front. We are intervening on the PSEC front. We are intervening on the ports front. We are intervening on the SOE reform front. We are intervening on so many fronts, on the NPA capacitation front. So there is so much on the SAPS front, on the Hawks front, so there is so much that business is doing in terms of intervening at all different levels to ensure that we can continue to move things along. I mean, we are intervening on the humanitarian front, in terms of ensuring that the KZN devastation, for instance, those people are actually taken. So businesses focus right now, needs to be on ensuring that delivery can happen, on ensuring that capacitation can happen. Because without capacitation, even the investment that has been committed in the last investment conference is not going to come through. Because Ashraf, the condition precedent to those investors saying that I'm going to invest X amount of billions is that they're expecting that the system has to work. At the very least, the network industries have to work. So we cannot continue to be on the same trajectory on the energy, rail, ports, telecoms front. So those are actually the critical problems and issues that South Africa has to be addressing.
Well, I think that's a given. I mean, I liken that to, like the a person supporting a football club, and the football club having won everything in the previous 20 years, wins nothing now. You can't implement the same system. There needs to be a complete change, right? But therefore, in terms of your interventions, right? Yes, some interventions, you mentioned the relief to KZN, I understand that part, but are some of the interventions advisory interventions? I mean, what I'm asking you is is it advisory or can you actually implement? That means, do you have the power to truly effect change?
You see, now that's the thing, to say that when the president appoints an SOE reform council, mainly made up of the private sector, what are the terms of reference of that PSEC, council, or that SOE reform council? What powers do they have? What mandate do they have? Is it only to put a report together, so that we can ensure that we give the recommendations to the president and the president actually has to implement? Because you see, Ashraf, we're going to also have to be very realistic in terms of what business can do, because we don't have the power to effect policy reform. We can actually sit and bring all the clever people together who can say the same way that Business for South Africa did, in 2020, when we hit the pandemic, when they came up with this economic recovery plan and 1,000 pages and said to government, from all the industry perspectives, we have actually had engagements with all the different industries. This is what they are willing to give. If you as government were to remove 1, 2, 3, 4 constraints, this is what we as business can come to the party to do. What happened to that document? It's sitting gathering dust. We had an engagement with government. They were not interested in listening to it. We actually had to start a parallel engagement where we actually sat at NetLeg and came up with the current economic recovery and reconstruction plan. Now,
but all of that is really, all of that is really concerning. Where a think tank like yourselves, people like yourself, you can make recommendations and nobody listens. Now, I'm not asking you which political party you vote or you voted for, but here's an important loaded question, right? Therefore, as the CEO of Business Leadership SA, would you call for regime change? Is it time for a new political party to lead the country in the next election?
Business Leadership South Africa, we don't have a position, on which political party has to come to the party as Business Leadership South Africa. And I don't know to what extent we actually have political party discussions. We actually don't. The conversations that we do have is that we are very clear that the business of business in this country cannot continue to be business. We are very clear that business is going to have to get involved in the political economy conversation because politics determine economics. So when politics fail, then we know that the economy is actually going to be affected. We know that the biggest constraint to achieving the right levels of economic growth in this country, is the political economy. So we will work with whatever government comes into power. So if it's going to be the ANC again, if it's going to be the DA, if it's going to be the EFF, we don't have a choice. Government has got or is a very critical stakeholder to business, and we are not going to pick and choose to say that we will only work with this government or that government. If it's a government, we are going to work with them, and we just hope that we can have
Fair
a
enough, yeah.
meaningful working relationship with whatever government of the day.
Okay, I know you need to go pretty shortly, so two things very quickly, right? One is, what is the position of business on rethinking our economy? There are just so many people, people that I follow who feel like this all capitalist line clearly hasn't worked in a country that needs massive transformation. What then is the position of Business Leadership SA with regard to the nature of our economy?
The concern of BLSA in as far as where things are at the moment is that we still don't have a conducive environment within which business needs to operate. The policy reforms, that you need to be able to get investment into the country, some of them, and I must give the ANC and the government credit, have actually been started, but we haven't seen them to their final conclusion, as it were, which therefore places a huge burden on investment and a huge burden on business, as it were. We are worried about the high levels of unemployment. We are worried about the fact that we've got so much high domestic inequality that is leading to social, instability. We are worried that our country's risk has escalated, according to the World Economic Forum, a global risk report, which puts us in a very precarious position. We are worried about, that it's going to get more difficult for the country before it gets better. We are worried about some of the conversations that we're having with our stakeholders, investors, and principals who are outside of the country, who don't understand why we have not implemented some of the things that we promised to implement years ago, why things are not moving. We are having very difficult conversations about trying to get our principals to allocate the necessary investment into South Africa. We are seeing investment being redirected to other African economies who are making it much more easier for capital and investment to go into those, countries. So we are worried about where things are, hence, our stance that we need to work with government to change the status quo.
And the changing of the economy very quickly from a capitalist economy to something different. Quick thought on that.
Ask that question again, Ashraf.
And your thoughts on the shifting or the changing of our economy from a largely capitalist-based economy to something that could either be more socialist or something in between?
Look, capital is going to do what it always does, but it obviously has to model itself to the needs of the society, because we can't be tone deaf to what the country, the society needs capital to be at that time. But if you're going to make it difficult for capital to land in the country, capital is like water. It will always follow the path of least resistance. So government is therefore going to have to make it easy for capital. You see, the problem is not capital investing in humanitarian efforts or investing in the state capacitation or whatever the case is. But as long as you ensure that it can land and generate the necessary profits that it needs to generate for it to be able to do what it needs to do, then capital will actually land anyway. So the problem is not what we're expecting. The problem is not what we need to do to obtain our social license to operate, but it is the restrictions, it is the constraints, it is the ease of doing business, it is the country risk, it is all those things that government is actually not taking care of at the moment. So are we going to be a social state anytime soon? No, I don't see it happening, and I don't think it should.
Okay, here's the last thing, and this is directed to business, right? Whereas many people are critical of government, and I think justifiably so, there are also thousands of people are very critical of business, particularly big business, in terms of what they see as big multinationals, massive profits, high salaries to industry leaders, and therefore exploitative, not enough money filtering down to the other people employed by business, not enough job security, etc. Basically, the general accusation is business needs to rethink how it deals even with its own employees, and the citizens of the country outside of government. Do you agree with that business, particularly big business, also needs to rethink how it works and deals with all of us?
Business in general, big business in particular, can do more and should do more. We are mistaken as business to think that these two economies, one nation, can continue to prevail without there being an existential crisis, for those who actually want to benefit more from this economy. We are mistaken to think that at some point, the residents of Alexander are not going to cross the M1 bridge and make Sandton, which is the richest square mile in Africa, ungovernable. We are mistaken to think that the poor and the rich and the haves and the have-nots can continue to coexist, without there being the July anarchy that we experienced, as business, or rather as a country. So business from that perspective has to do more. If we want social stability, we have to invest or look at how we can actually intervene from a domestic inequality perspective. It cannot be sustainable to operate in an environment where 66% of young people are lying idle. What do you think is going to happen? It's a recipe for disaster, and unfortunately our levels as a country have not only reached disaster levels, it is now at a catastrophe level, and business is going to have to intervene. If we say we are the only social partner with disproportionate resources and therefore a disproportionate voice, we're going to have to utilize our disproportionality to actually deal with some of the social issues that we're facing as a country. Transformation is key. SMME, support and meaningful participation of the SMME is key to ensure that we can change the status quo, as it were.
Well, there you are, the big picture into business and how business can be this enabler in South African society, working with government, working outside of government, for us to deliver the country of our dreams, to deliver this champion nation that I so often talk about. Busisiwe, Mavuso, appreciate your time. CEO of Business Leadership SA. You have lots of thoughts. The question from an audience point of view is like, what do they make about what has just been said? Spot on, or maybe a rethink on that too. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ashraf.
There we are. Lots to come out of that. I can tell you now, you literally can put down 15 points there and tick off which one of the points that was said, and then see which ones matches up, and then what more should be done around that, right? As always, your thoughts on that matters, and you can comment right away, by the way, on our, via WhatsApp. You can comment on the Salam Media social media pages as we talk to you. Always welcome you with your opinions, right? We're going to chat to... We're gonna pick up a conversation that the former Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan had yesterday, but not in a physical rally, but on a Twitter space, and we'll do that one.